Test, test, 1, 2. Test, test, 1, 2. Test, test, 1, 2. Test, test, 1, 2.
Yo, shut the front door.
Well, the title says Playtesting My Card Game. But I'm not doing that. Not anymore. I realize the card game sucks. There's no other way to say it. The card game sucks. And I realized that. I said to myself, you know what? It's okay. Seemed like it could be really good at the time. But the truth is, it's bad. It's really bad. Worked on it really hard. Came up with little effects and keywords and thematic mechanics for every Oblivion class or whatever. Came up with special rules that might make it an engaging tactical combat experience. And I realized that it just was not very good. So, but it's okay, because I think it's all a part of the process. You flesh out the ideas that you think could be good, test them, experiment with them, and then you realize, okay, that's not the direction I want to go in. That's what you learn. You learn what you don't want your card game to be. And to tell you the truth, over the weekend, I was kind of like, man, do I just move on do I just focus on other things now? Like I always do. I get like real into game design, like turn-based game design for a little while. And then I'm like, these ideas aren't that great. Let me move on. Let me just focus on other stuff. Let me focus on like reading or something. Reading and writing. For a bit. But over the weekend, on Saturday, I was lying in bed, thinking to myself, man, this card game, I'm not going to give up. I felt like I was close to something. Some kind of breakthrough design idea that would really make me want to keep focusing on it. And I think something came to me when I was laying there. And I'll explain it. I'll explain the system. And it could just be that I get all excited about these design ideas and there's really no reason to. Like, oh, it satisfies some nebulous idea I have about how I want the game to be designed and like what kind of principles I want it to adhere to. And that's really cool. I'm so glad I thought of that. But in reality, it's just like, doesn't really have any value. Or maybe not. Maybe other people. Maybe it does have a lot of value, and people will see the elegance of the system. So let me try to explain what I'm talking about. So thinking about the card game design over the years, really, it's been years that I've been kind of dabbling in this. There's kind of two main ways you could create the game to work. You could design it to work. You could have it where you're using the cards as game pieces in such a way where their relative positions have some kind of impact on the game state and the functionality of the cards and stuff. Or you could design your card game to be like Magic the Gathering, where it doesn't matter where the cards are on the board. They're basically like, they're just like, I don't know how I'd describe it. They just sort of represent like data. There's no board component to Magic the Gathering, really. But other games, Keyforge, let's say, and probably a lot of other games that I don't know about. The positions of the cards matter a little bit more in such a way where their relative positions in a line have certain effects. So, like, okay, is this card adjacent to another card? Is this card on the flank? Meaning that it only has one other card adjacent to it. And there's various effects that come into play when you look at those things. So that's sort of, okay, there's a little bit of a positional element to that game that you don't have in Magic the Gathering. And you want to go even further, you could say, okay, well, I'm going to put my cards on a grid. And now, not only does the relative position of your cards matter in terms of your cards, but also in terms of relation to your opponent's cards. And there's certain games out there, card games, I guess, where I think like Sorcery, like Arthurian Legends, has like a big board that you play, that you like place cards onto. And there's lots of games like that too, probably like living card games. But I kind of like the idea of keeping your cards on your side of the table and not like moving them around like on your opponent's side of things, which is a common trading card game kind of convention. Your cards kind of stay over here on your side of things, and you do things with them. Maybe you target other guy's cards, because the idea is it's your like collectible card game. You don't want other people handling your cards too much if they're like valuable or whatever, and it's a trading card game. You're covetous of your cards. They're not just game pieces, shared game pieces, right? So, and I agree with that. I like the idea of that idea that kind of comes from the trading card game realm. So, I thought kind of the best thing you could have for like a tactical type of card game is kind of like a grid of cards on your side and a grid of cards on your opponent's side. And then, you could have different abilities that are similar to like chess movement paths, or like any tactics game that's played on a square grid, a grid of squares, where you have abilities that have like areas of effect, or some sort of line, and it's always done with like squares. Like, oh, this is like an AOE that has whatever squares, made up of squares, or it's like a diagonal thing of. That's a common thing you see in tactics games. So, and thinking to myself, yeah, that'd be cool if I could make it so the card game created a grid like that systematically. But there's all these problems when you start thinking about how you want to do that. You could say, and maybe they're not such big problems, but to me, it's like an imperfection in the design. And I'm an artist, right? I'm an artist creating a piece of art. It has to be perfect. Well, it doesn't have to be perfect, but there's some things that I insist on being to a certain standard of quality. Like, you could say, okay, before every game starts, put a penny in the center of the table, and that's the center of your line that you have to like play cards in front of. Your first card always has to go there, and you can play up to 3 cards on either side of it, and that's your battle grid. You could say something like that, but to me, that's maybe that's a good design, but to me, I don't really like it. That's just an example of something that I thought about that I did not like. Because, what if the penny gets moved over here, and then it's like, or what if the guy puts his card off slightly and this guy puts his card over here, and then it's like, oh shit, which one was the center? Oh, we forget. Or, oh no, someone budged the penny and now we're arguing over which card was the center card. You know what I mean? So the solution that I devised for creating a sort of a grid of cards was this. You just play the cards from left to right. And every time you play a card, it has to go in a particular spot. And the player who goes second has to play the cards from right to left. So, player one always plays his cards from left to right. And every time you play a card, it has to go in a particular spot. There's no ambiguity about where it goes. Depending on how many cards you already have out there, it has to go in a particular spot. And the way it works, so at the moment anyway, is You play a card in the top row, then you put one beneath it. Then you play a card in the top row, and you put one beneath it. Top row, one beneath it. Top row, one beneath it. Until you get to 6 across. Now, during the game, and then your opponent's doing the same thing over here, but from right to left. Because he went second. So you're always going to have cards kind of like faced off with your opponent. And if you have more cards, they'll be off that direction. And then you'll have things like, okay, if this card dies or whatever, maybe you flip it over, and then later you remove it. And then at that point, you can move your cards around maybe, but it has to end up where it's in a legal position, which is either like this or like this. Oh, you can't see what I'm doing, can you? I forgot the other camera is disabled.
I'm gonna do it in VR. Chat, should I do it in Portal? Is there a way to portal helicopters?
Yeah. Well, you know what? Let me just. I guess that works. All right, so. So you're always expanding the grid out to the right if you went first, and your opponent's always expanding it out to the left. And in my mind, this is great because whenever you play a card, there's say if you had more than one option of where you can play it, you could have an opponent that does lame shit like, oh, there's my card, it's right there. I played it right here. And then you're like, okay, well, is that on the top row or the bottom row? Right? Oh, it was down here. Oh, actually, it was up here. You know, you don't want to design the game to where people can play like that. So the solution is to say, okay, these are all the cards you have out there right now. You want to add to your cards. The only place it can go is right there. And then, like I said, when you lose cards, we'll create some kind of system of rules where you got to replace that spot. Ideally, not something like that, because that's annoying to do. But you could say, okay, you have to replace this spot, and you can do it in 3 moves, or maybe 2 or 4 moves or something. And what would that look like? Oh, I don't know, maybe 1, 2, 3. Like maybe that's a legal thing to do. Like this whatever card's tailing over here can always move around like this. And so you design the rules around that. And then, so when you have this grid element, it opens up so many more options to design combat tactical systems around the combat. Because then you can come up with all kinds of stuff. So the card game design mission is still alive. I was about to throw in the towel and move on and start focusing on something else again. But after coming up with this idea, it makes me happy. I like it. I like this idea. I'm going to keep thinking about it and trying to come up with shit. And all this is going to be totally different. The whole weapons, symbols, bullshit, the attributes, I'm scrapping all that stuff for now. Even the other cards, like the birth signs and the skills and everything, I'm getting rid of all of that. And we're just going to focus on the class cards and maybe coming using like the 9 different offensive symbols, I guess, to come up with, assuming, and then also like, okay, let's make them all the same cost. That's probably the next biggest thing I have to figure out is how are the players playing cards? Is there any kind of resource system? I have to think about all that shit again. And, at first I was like, I really want to make it so it can be like a traditional trading card game and have like a cost. And when you have a cost, it means you have variety. Easy variety, because you can make your cards diverse and different just based on higher and lower power levels, and that's it. Like if you have a range of costs between 1 and 7, that's 7 times the number of cards you can essentially come up with for your game. But if your cards are just going to have one cost, no cost, basically, like Yu-Gi-Oh, for example, I think is that way. The cost is just playing the card. You get to play one card per turn or something like that. Then you're gonna have. I mean, Yu-Gi-Oh has tons of cards, but the thing with Yu-Gi-Oh is that if you look at one of those cards, it's like a full paragraph of barely readable text about the unique shit that it does, and it makes sense that they would have to get that crazy with the effects of the different cards, because they can't vary them just based on attack power or toughness or health or whatever, and cost or whatever, like Magic the Gathering is able to do, or Hearthstone. But I'm not even really designing this game to be a trading card game. I'm designing it to be a living card game with the potential to be a trading card type of game left available to it if somebody wanted to go that direction. I think the way to do it is to start with a design that could be a decent living card game design, where both players have the same decks, maybe 42 cards, 21 like two copies of 20 of each card, 21 different cards, 42 cards each. And then the game is just totally balanced around the two players having the exact same decks. And it's just like a chess, it's just like playing chess or something. Like very predictable, balanced, and just all about like um it's not about deck building or theory crafting or anything like that. It's just about playing the mechanical situation. Uh, like chess, thinking through all the different lines that you could take. I think they call them, uh, and just being better at that than your opponent. Having like a brain that's more like a computer than your opponent. Uh, or just a better, they call it a strategy game, but like, is that really strategy? Not really. It's kind of like, I guess maybe if I don't know much about chess at the high level, it's probably it's probably very much a mind game. But it also, I don't know, maybe it's I've heard it's just memorization. Like I've heard the best chess players in the world say lament the fact that chess is like boring because it's just all like memorizing stuff. Uh, but my point is that you start with a really clean, airtight design of a game like that people can sink their teeth into. Just like a real basic, like, okay, I get it, I understand it. It's simple. This is the game. This is what I'm trying to get good at. I'm trying to get good at playing my cards in the proper order, so it forms my battle line in such a way that's gonna let me like combat my opponent's cards best. Okay, I one of my cards died. I need to replace it. Um, I need to be good at maneuvering my cards so that the resulting, and then maybe I could do something like that or something. The resulting board state is what I want it to be. Um, and I think you can create a game like this. It's kind of like chess with cards. Uh, by, like I said, taking those 9 different offensive symbols that we have for all the different Oblivion classes and assigning some kind of functionality to them, that. And like I said, the cards aren't going to leave your side of the board. They're going to stay like this. So you'll probably have some kind of effect like, okay, this guy, when he attacks, he hits the guy diagonal to the right, or diagonal to the left, or directly in front of him. And this guy, when he attacks, he hits, the guy behind directly in front of him, or maybe the guy one and to the left, or one and to the right, depending on his attack or whatever. But the guy back here hits the dude on the opposite side of the board over here with his attack. So you have, once you create the grid, you have a way to assign default targets of your cards. uh, in a pretty good way, I think. A lot better than what I was trying to come up with before, with the idea of, oh, the attack goes out this way, and you have to imagine it like it goes out this way and comes back here, um, and it goes through the battle line to either the first backstab. And I thought all those ideas were kind of cool and stuff, but it's just too much that the players have to like imagine in their heads. Uh, Whereas the clarity of things is so important, I think. Um, you have to design the rules for the game to where they're so clear that they could never be, accidentally or intentionally misinterpreted. Um, and I think people will appreciate design, that kind of design, in a card battler type of card game. Uh, so I've got a lot of thinking to do at this point, but for whatever reason, I feel like me devising this idea was the hard part to get to. It's so simple, like, anybody could have come up with, okay, left to right if you go first, right to left if you go second, top bottom, top bottom, top bottom, and then you keep the grid like that. You have to, whenever a card dies. But to me, that's what I was looking for. That's what I was trying to come up with. So, everything's downhill from here. Everything else, I think, is going to be pretty easy for me to get myself to be satisfied with. And hopefully I'll be back at my spinny table in the coming weeks with another card game to test. I tested this one, it sucked. Went in a different direction. But the great thing is, I'm gonna be able to easily use the same program to edit all this shit that I have. Yeah, I'll be able to easily edit all of these cards, with my React program, the CSS.
I'm sorry, I just blew up a helicopter that pissed at me. Maybe we try to have some fun in a real fucking death machine.
So I've got a few ideas I'm kicking around. I want it, like I said, I want it to be really clean the way it plays. So I'm thinking we keep like the Magic the Gathering kind of like, basically what I want is there to be an active player and for him to take his turn, where he sort of like is making attacks with all of his cards, and then this is a Magic the Gathering sort of I don't know what you'd call it, just sort of like design paradigm where you do attacks with your cards during your turn, and then basically what you're doing is every attack you do on your turn, you're sacrificing that card as a blocker on your opponent's turn. And then it's the same thing for him. Every card he attacks with on his turn, he's kind of sacrificing that card as a blocker during your turn. And then at the start of your turn, you ready up everything. So you're constantly using your cards to attack, leaving some guys left open or ready for blocks, and then readying up everything again on your next turn. I think that's a good sort of design concept to adhere to. So I'll probably design something similar to that. But what I want is for the attacker, every time he does an attack, if it's a valid attack, like it might not be valid all the time. Then your opponent is going to have to do something on his side of the board as a result. I guess that's not super necessary that that's the case. Yeah, it's not really that necessary that that's the case. Well, you have to come up with some kind of rule like, okay, every time you make an attack, if it hits one of your opponent's cards, then that card either needs to get killed or it needs to do some kind of block. And then so the action is on your opponent to make some kind of choice. So that's another big thing is okay, if we're following this whole attack, defend, ready up loop paradigm, that means your opponent has agency during your turn to make some decisions. But not to attack, only to respond to your attacks in certain ways. And I think I like that. I like that whole concept. But with Magic the Gathering, it's different because you're not going back and forth as much as with this design, the way this design might entail. What I've been kind of, I haven't really described all these ideas or given them terms and like thought about them very clearly. That's why I'm trying to like talk it out right now. But it's basically what I've been trying to, what I've sort of decided to do is something like that. And it seems okay. Like in chess, you go back and forth. I do a thing, he does a thing. I do a thing, he does a thing. I do a thing, he does a thing. But we're doing the same kinds of things. Whereas in this paradigm, it would be like, I do a thing, maybe he responds to what I did, maybe he doesn't. Or maybe he has a choice of how to respond. And if he has a choice of how to respond, he has to update his cards to reflect his choice. So the action is on him, but not in the same way that the action's on me during my turn. Sometimes the action's on him, but not in the same way that it's on me. I think that's okay to have it work like that. Other games, they have a concept of like flow, where it's like Okay, I'm attacking right now. The flow passed to him. Now he's attacking. Um, that's an interesting concept. And maybe that's the way to do it. You know, that could be an interesting type of thing. Like, we sort of do away with the typical, and it's an idea I've kicked around for a while too. Do away with the typical trading card game turn paradigm. And you do something more like uh, all right, we enter a combat phase. We both enter a combat phase at the same time. Um, I go first, and then maybe it kills one of his cards. Maybe it does some damage to his health. Whatever. Maybe it doesn't do any of that. Now he goes. Maybe it's some kind of block to the attack I just did. Or maybe it's an attack himself. And then the action's back on me. Or maybe there is no kind of block that you can do. Maybe if a card gets killed, it gets killed. The moment that's sort of a different, like, declaring blockers is like a Magic the Gathering paradigm that you take for granted. Maybe there's no such thing as that. Maybe if at any point in time one of your cards is taking enough damage from any of my cards combined together, perhaps different attacks sort of lined up on one point without being deflected enough. If at any point that happens, then maybe the very next thing you have to do is destroy your card. But then at that point, you can do some kind of attack. And then if there's enough damage on me, now I have to destroy that card or something. And then so it's almost like a cleaner way to do combat like that. That's kind of what I'm thinking where this might go. Um, and then maybe uh, and then maybe rather at a certain point, rather than make some other attack or whatever, you can choose to or maybe it's every single time. Maybe the turns are just that quick. Like maybe the turn is play a card, tap a card, draw a card. And your opponent goes. Play a card, tap a card, draw a card. Then you go. Play a card, tap a card, draw a card. Then he goes, play a card, tap a card, draw a card. Um, and then every time he taps a card, if it killed your card, you reflect that it killed your card, or if it did damage to your health source or whatever, you do that. You have to do that before he draws his card and essentially passes the turn to you. But then the question is, at what point do you remove the card right away? Or do you flip it over and then on your turn, or do you, and then at what point do you ready up your cards again? Or do you ever have to do that? No, you don't have to ever ready your cards. I like where this is going. Just very simple. Yeah, this is kind of what I'm going for. Just a very simple rule of play a card, tap a card, draw a card. Play a card, tap a card, draw a card, and then things can get more complex by adding additional steps, like maybe it's play a card, tap a card, move a card. And maybe some cards allow you to take, tap more than one card per turn. I like the idea of not having this is an important concept for me to sort of get through my head, I think. But forgetting the whole idea of the other player responding to a block. Um, hmm. Yeah, something like this could get very tactical. Um, hmm. And I don't think I like the idea of. There's two things I want to get rid of that feel cumbersome. And it's the idea of responding to attacks with blocks. You get rid of that. If an attack lands and it does enough damage, I guess, to kill your opponent's card, he has to kill the card. Card's dead. There's no, oh, you have a chance to do something on your side of the board to sort of prevent this card's death. Now I'm waiting for you to think about that. Get rid of that concept. And another thing I don't really like is the idea of trading your card. Having one of your cards die as a result of something you did on your side, and that kind of goes hand in hand with the Magic the Gathering paradigm of declaring blockers, because okay, you decided to block with your more powerful creature or your evenly matched creature. Now we both remove cards from the board. I don't like having to make players sacrifice their own cards like that, I guess. Um, it would feel cleaner to me, I think, to, uh, I don't know, make the attack illegal to do if it would destroy the card making the attack. Sort of like putting your own king into checkmate. Into check. That's an illegal move. So a similar concept. And then that way you're only looking for your cards. Um, yeah, I like that better. So these are the kind of things that, in my mind, this is where you start. Like you start with, how do I want this game to feel when you're playing it? Like, what are the players doing, really? Um, so you start with that sort of like high level. Okay, this is what two people playing this game really actually kind of looks like. Uh, in terms of like what they're doing with their cards, how they're getting cards out on the board, you know, when they're waiting for their opponent to do something versus um, when it's their you know time to make a decision. How are they signaling to their opponent that it's the actions on them uh, for something? It might be a little difficult sometimes if you make some move that destroys an opponent's piece. It might not be super clear that it does that uh, right away to your opponent. But you'll have to sit there and wait for him to see that. You might have to go like, "Well, this is dead. I just did this. This is dead. You didn't see it. Remove it. Flip it over. Whatever. Okay, now we can continue." You might have to do that from time to time. But that's fine. That's not a big deal. Uh, so you start with that high level concept of how I want the game to play, how I want it to feel. And then you design rules around achieving that. Specific rules for the cards. Specific rules for the turn phases. And other stuff like that. So it's one thing at a time. I think a good takeaway from this evening's discussion is I don't those things that I thought I might like from the Magic the Gathering typical trading card game paradigm, I don't actually like. And I don't actually want those. And there probably won't be any kind of concept of readying up your cards. Once they're tapped, they're tapped. And they have some sort of persistent effect. They're, you can imagine it as, okay, I tap this guy. He comes into the game like this. You can tap this way, you can tap this way, or even upside down, or I could just leave him there. So he's got 4 different states he can be in, first of all. Maybe I allow players to play it into any state they want, or maybe I require them to always play it into one state. And then once per turn, they can adjust a card somewhere, or maybe more than one. And that will update the battle. That will update the game state in such a way that maybe destroys one of their opponent's cards. So you're really like replacing the concept of moving pieces around on a grid like you would see in chess, with placing them in, this 2x6 grid, which you're sort of limited to depending on how many cards, where you can place the new one. The new one has to go in a very particular spot every time you play it. But you're constantly losing cards as you play the game, and shifting them around through that means of filling in the gaps. So yeah, maybe we have some kind of concept of the cards come out in a ready position where they have like no static, sort of like a static damage effect that you're applying to your opponent's cards, and then like a static defensive effect that you're applying to your own cards. It might be a little too complex for people to take in, because every time you move a card, it will, it would be simpler to say, okay, every time a card does some sort of tap move, then an attack is made, and a particular card, then only then do people have to calculate, okay, I know exactly where this card is attacking. Let me look at all the cards surrounding it and adding up those static influences, and just determine if this one particular card is dead or not. Instead of every time some change happens on the board, okay, now I have to, this guy moved from here to here. How does that affect not only my cards over here, but his cards over here? We don't want that situation to happen. So we probably want some kind of system where a concept of, okay, an attack was just made by this card. Now we have to calculate, did it kill a card or not? And then afterwards, maybe it provides some kind of static effect by being in that particular orientation. Or do we have some kind of system of, okay, I'm attacking with this card. Yeah, I'll have to think about that. Because ideally, I would like it. Yeah, I'm thinking what I'd like is very basic system you could have is like upright is the ready state, and maybe there's some passive effects applied that way. Left is like an attacking state. Right is like a blocking state. And then upside down is like a spent state. And then flipped over is dead. And so it has to be like removed at a certain point. And then, recycle. I like the clarity of okay, this guy's attacking. You have to resolve it somehow. Okay, after it's been resolved, I flip him that way, and the attack is completed. That to me is the clearest way to communicate what is happening. Or maybe he can flip back to this direction if he wants. Upside down or sideways. So this is an attack. You resolve it, and then after that, he has to move out of the attack. I don't know. Lots to think about. I like the whole idea of if at any point you were to just walk away from the game, you would be able to come back to it and know exactly where you were, what you were doing, by looking at the card state. I don't know how to describe that, like design principle. But I think you design it like that, it makes it so like, for example, if this guy was in some sort of attack stance, attack orientation, and we saw that he was targeting this card over here, and we noticed that this card was still in the ready position, he wasn't in the blocking or dead position, we would know, okay, we're waiting on the opponent to do something. Because he's in an active attack posture. Whereas, and my point is, after the attack's completed, maybe he goes like this, then we would say, okay, this guy needs to be turned upside down. Whereas it would, if we just said, okay, it's fine if we just leave him like that, because there's more than one attack phase in this design, there's more than one it's sequential attacks as opposed to one attack phase. And later we wanted to attack with this guy, we might say, oh, wait a minute, who's attacking? We've got 2 cards tapped. So if we do this whole sequential concept of attacking, there needs to be like multiple states that the card can be in at any point in time. Like, like this would have to, after the attack completes, you'd have to like exhaust it somehow to some, put it to some different state. And then so essentially the board game state perfectly communicates, assuming you know whose turn it is, um, where the sort of resolution procedure is. There's no ambiguity there. So that's important to me. And it's just all about kind of coming up with rules that create that. Yeah, we don't want the players to feel like they have to be computers, like they've got to like calculate all this information all the time just to ensure that they're playing the game right. Uh, that's a bad situation. It should be easy for the players to play the game correctly, even if they're bad at the game. The game should not be difficult to play correctly because of the way your rules are designed. All right, I'm going to bed.